I did deliveries for my parents' restaurant when I was in high school. I had just turned 16 and got my driver's license, and my parents always wanted to start offering delivery. I didn't want to be a waiter or work at the register, so driving sounded like a good option for me. When this happened, I had been doing deliveries for a few months, so I was pretty comfortable with it. It was a Thursday around 8 p.m., and my dad gave me an order to deliver. I got in my car, which was actually my mom's SUV, and then started to drive. Google Maps said the house was 25 minutes away. Our town was small, so 25 minutes away was pretty far. As I drove, I started to recognize the area as being on the edge of town, and I still had 10 minutes to go. I've never been this far out in one direction before, so I was definitely paying attention and keeping my eyes open. I wasn't scared per se, but I just felt uncomfortable. The only houses I was passing now were farmhouses far from the main road. When the directions told me to turn, it was down an unpaved path. A farmhouse this far out at night was the last place that I wanted to be. I knew I was probably just spooking myself though, and it was just a simple delivery. I drove down to the end of the path, which ended and just became a small grass field in front of the house. It wasn't clear whether or not to drive on the grass, so I just parked my car there and got out. It was eerie quiet. All I could hear were footsteps on the grass as I walked up to the house. The porch light was on too, but no other lights were on inside of the house. I was looking over my shoulders constantly as I walked up. The longer I was out there, the more uncomfortable I was. Just before I reached the porch, I heard something. It sounded like it was coming from the backyard behind the farmhouse. It was loud, like a wooden door opening. I stepped onto the porch and dropped the bag on the doorstep, then rang the doorbell and rushed back to the car. I was regretting how far I parked and wish I just drove onto the grass, as all I could hear were my footsteps as I walked back. I started to hear footsteps running behind me in my direction. I turned around and saw 3 men sprinting at me through the grass. I tried to run back to my car, but in seconds, I was tackled to the ground. One of them held me down while the other started taking everything from my pockets. I was yelling and screaming for help, but I knew nobody could hear me. It all happened really fast, and once they looted my pockets, one of the men kicked me in the stomach, and they all ran and got into my car and drove away. I got up and just watched the headlights disappear on the long empty road. I had no phone and no way of getting back to the restaurant. I didn't know what else to do than to just start walking towards the road. When I reached the road, I started walking down the way I came. I had no way of telling the time, but I think I was walking for 30 to 40 minutes before the patrol car pulled up in front of me. My parents had called for them to check on me because I wasn't responding. To sum it up, cops found a small barn behind the farmhouse with another restaurant delivery bag inside of it. They think they tried to do the same thing to someone before me, but probably missed their chance, or chickened out for some reason because there were no other reports. The actual owners of the farmhouse were out of town, so they had no involvement. My phone was able to be tracked and was found thrown in a field on the side of the road, not too far away. My mom's stolen car, however, took 3 weeks to be located. It was found nearly 400 miles away and had been almost entirely empty. This was almost a year ago now, and those 3 men that attacked me are still yet to be identified or found. I had this part-time job when I was in high school, working as a pizza delivery driver for a large pizza chain. I saw some pretty wild stuff on the job. During that job, though, there was one thing that seriously creeped me out. One day I'm making normal deliveries when I pull up to an innocent-looking house. A guy answers the door and just grabs the pizza from me, thrusts a fistful of ones in my face, and slams the door behind me. All I could think to myself was, what a rude guy. As I'm walking back, I find that not only has this guy not given me enough for his 20-inch meat lovers, but he hasn't even bothered to tip me. I've been burned once or twice before, and the difference ends up coming out of my wages, so I wasn't going to let that happen for a third time. I walked back to the front porch and started banging on the guy's front door for at least 5 minutes. I could see him moving behind the frosted glass panel, but was totally ignoring my knocking. In the end, I lost my temper and said, "Hey, man, this comes out of my paycheck. I don't want to have to call the cops, but I will." The second the word cops rolls off my tongue, he comes right up to the front door and opens it. Not all the way, maybe a third of the way open. This guy is saying sorry a whole lot. He's pale, sweating, and his hands are shaking as he passes me out a 20. Just saying sorry the whole time. I think to myself, what is this guy's problem? But then I catch a glimpse of something behind him in the hallway. My eyes were met with a ghastly sight that made my heart skip a beat. The room was shrouded in an eerie silence, broken by the sound of my heart racing. The air was thick and smelled of iron and bleach, an unsettling combination that made me feel sick to my stomach. And then I saw it. The dark red stain on the wooden floor, large and ominous like a gaping wound. It was as if the blood had seeped into the very grain of the wood, leaving a permanent mark of violence that had taken place. My eyes darted around the assortment of cleaning products scattered haphazardly around the stain, and a chill ran down my spine. It was clear that someone was trying to cover their tracks. My attention was then drawn to the man standing in the room, his face twisted in a mixture of fear and anger. I could tell from the way he was acting that he was hiding something, and my mind raced with the possibilities of what could be. Was he the perpetrator, or just an innocent bystander? Before I could even process what was happening, he slammed the door in my face, leaving me standing there in shock. I knew that I had stumbled upon something big. I had to get the hell out of there as soon as possible. I'm back in my car, speeding to the pizza place as fast as I can without crashing. As soon as I get there, I called the cops. As it turns out, I had interrupted this guy cleaning up a murder. From what I heard, the guy was having an affair with a high school girl that was 30 years his junior. She was over at his place while his wife was out of town, and she ordered a pizza at some point. Then, before it arrives, the guy kills her because she's threatening to ruin his marriage. I had no clue she ordered the pie, and didn't realize he was panicking when I showed up at the door. That's how he got caught. Crazy story, right? But for me, the craziest part isn't so much about the whole murderous infidelity thing. It's that the girl unknowingly kicked off a chain of events that would catch her own killer. I had to go to court a bunch of times, since I was basically the star witness in the case. It was so freaky seeing that guy looking at me when he talked to the prosecutor. He literally killed the girl with his own hands, and there he was giving me death stares across the room. As I said, I've seen some wild stuff working as a pizza delivery guy, but that's the only thing that gives me nightmares, is that guy's eyes looking at me. I was a pizza delivery driver, and this was by far the scariest thing that happened to me. It took place about 1 year ago. I was working on a Thursday night, which is usually busy. I made quite a few deliveries, and as the day went on, things started to calm down. At about 1 in the morning, I got a delivery for a cheese pizza. I put it into my car and drove to the location, which was about 10 minutes away. It was in an area of town that I rarely delivered to, and was a little more rundown. I got to the address, which was a 2-story house with a pretty decent-sized yard and many overgrown plants and trees. It looked to be a little rundown, like most houses in the area, and had a front porch that seemed to wrap around the house. I got out of my car, grabbed the pizza, and walked up to the driveway. Then I walked up the stairs to the door and rang the doorbell. About 30 seconds went by, and I was about to ring the bell again when the door started to open. A man answered. He was fairly large and bald. He looked to be about in his 50s. He just stood there staring at me for a second. I said I had his pizza and handed it to him. He almost looked surprised and said, "Oh, Okay, that's nice. And then he just started looking around. He seemed a little bit strange to me. And then he said he had to go get the cash and tip me, and he'd be right back. He went inside and closed the door. I stood there waiting for a good 2 or 3 minutes, but the man still didn't return. I was thinking about just leaving when I heard a noise and figured the man must be coming back. But when I listened closer, it wasn't coming from inside. It was coming from outside the porch. I looked around in the direction of the noise. Then I saw from the side of the house on the porch 3 men approaching me about 30 feet away. I guess it was just instinct, but as soon as I saw them, I turned and sprinted back down the porch onto the driveway. And when I did, I heard all 3 men chase after me. I ran as fast as I could back to my car, unlocked it, and jumped inside as I frantically started the engine and stepped on the gas. As soon as my car started moving forwards, the men reached me. I felt as one of them kicked my back door, and another tried opening the door from the side. I was just barely able to get away. I sped out of the neighborhood as fast as I could. I think the pizza delivery was some sort of trap or lure to get me robbed, or maybe even worse. I haven't delivered to that area much since. I'm grateful I haven't. But when I do, I'm extra careful.